Mhm.
And it's great to see a lot of you. I recognize names from some courses I taught earlier today and some in-person courses I had yesterday. So it's great to see you guys, and it's really fun to have high attendance at a course. So we're looking forward to this one going well. I am Maddie Oakley. I am an instructional technology coordinator with the district for the West region. So Bothell High School, Canyon Park Middle School, and most of the elementaries that filter into there. Go ahead, Pete.
I am Pete Connors. I'm the instructional technology coordinator for the East region, which mostly fills into Woodinville. I'm going to be manning the chat here. So if folks post anything out to everyone, great. If you have things that you want to direct message, I would suggest sending them to me, because if you direct message Maddie, I bet she won't be able to stop and answer. So I will be the one to be able to catch those. Yeah, thanks.
Cool. And if you've never taken a course with us before, a little bit on our background. I've been in this role for 3.5 years. Pete, I think, hit his 10-year anniversary very recently.
Yeah.
Before being in this role, we both were classroom teachers. I taught in North Shore, mostly kindergarten and first grade, but some third and fourth grade as well. Mostly at Kenmore Elementary, but also at Morelands and Kokanee.
And I was an elementary and reading specialist at a fourth grade class, and then like a K-8 reading specialist in New Mexico on the Navajo reservation at a BIE school.
So that's our background, and we love helping teachers use technology effectively in their teaching, help problem solve. I have 2 kids in the district. They'll both be at North Shore Middle School next year. So keep in mind that we are here not just during Summer Institute, but all year round. You can book time with us if you need support with something. And this course that we're teaching, we also love to take it on the road and come to your school and teach more about using these systems as well, if you think that that's something that your entire building or maybe grade level could benefit from. So keeping those things in mind, let's go forward. All right, so for today, we'll be talking about kind of why this course exists, the role of devices in the classroom, communicating expectations, what to do when mistakes happen, managing student devices with Lightspeed Classroom, and a little bit about supporting and modeling information literacy before we close up. So why this course? We created this course because we started hearing some common complaints, especially after our first year of being completely one-to-one. I always have a student who leaves their Chromebook at home. I'm constantly having problems around students forgetting to charge their Chromebook. Students would lose their charger and they don't have their names on it. A lot of kids are on task, but many aren't on the correct sites. The teacher gave some feedback that we have iPads at our school and we have kindergartners watching YouTube when their teacher's back was turned, and first graders taking thousands of pictures and filling up their camera roll. I don't know if there's a consistent message that tech at school is a tool and that school devices are like a work device. They're not toys. So we were hearing those messages and wanted to make sure that we had some consistent information that we could share and some ideas about how you can help head off some problems before they start and know what to do. Okay. All right, so looking a little bit at our timeline and why this course. Before 2020, I'm sure those of you teaching in the district before then remember our cows, our carts on wheels, lots of shared devices, a lot of problems with, well, we signed up to use the device, but the other teacher before us wasn't ready. Why can't we just have more devices and be a one-to-one district with everyone having their own? Then after 2020, it became, oh my gosh, they all have their own device. How do we help them and ourselves manage different things that come up? So we wanted to make this course. You can start your school year with a plan. It can give you a framework for considering how you want to introduce and teach your expectations for using devices in your classroom, and to also know what's in your control. Knowing the features available in Lightspeed Classroom Management will help your planning and decisions that you can make in the moment. Okay. Keeping in mind that this course is for a very large audience. So we will have folks who are teaching pre-K, elementary, high school, substitute teachers, administrative staff. So if you have a question that you know is very niche for your specific area, that's fine, but also being patient if you hear a question that's not really directed towards your role in the district. Okay, so talking about role of devices in the classroom, just going over what we have. For grades 2nd through 12th, we have Chromebooks. Students either log in with a Clever badge or with their student email and password. And our pre-K through 1st grade students have iPads. There's not a login that's required, and it stays at school. The slide says stays at school during the school year, but this summer as well, if students wanted to take iPads home, that was an opt-in, not an opt-out. So most of the time, iPads are staying at school, just keeping things really simple. So when do we use devices? The tech department is here telling you we do not expect you to use devices 100% of the time. You as the teacher should set the expectation that using devices is directed by the teacher. Okay, it's time to take out our Chromebooks now for this, or get our iPads out, not just using it whenever a student wants to use it. I'm not sure if we already have this specifically in a slide coming up here, but I have heard from sometimes middle school or high school teachers that there might be an issue and a student will say, like, well, you can't tell me what to do. I have freedom of privacy and I can do whatever I want with this device. And that is absolutely not the case. In fact, when students and their families go through the paperwork for the beginning of the year, all the forms that need to be filled out, there is the responsible use policy, and students do not have, they're not guaranteed the use of a Chromebook or iPad if it's not being used responsibly. Those tools can be confiscated as needed, and they're also not guaranteed a right to privacy. We have the ability when needed to look into emails, documents, etc., if there's concern about what students are doing. So just keeping that in mind, that the goal is not to give students devices and assume they will just always use it appropriately, but to keep in mind that having access to the device is a privilege and not just a complete right. All right. So communicating expectations. One thing that you may or may not have in your classroom is like a poster of some sort that you might put on the board or the wall of, can I use my device right now? This stoplight image gets used often. You can have a magnet where you're selecting which one is appropriate for the current time. We're not using devices, it's off. Be ready, your teacher may ask you to use, or yes, right now we're using devices. At the end of this course, I'll share a link to another slide deck that has gives you access to a PDF of this poster, a Canva file that you can edit if you want to change the language slightly, this presentation about teaching about Chromebooks and about iPads. So a lot of these resources here you'll get access to in a way that you can use yourself in your classroom. So we have a PDF of that poster that you can use. Teaching about Chromebooks, we have both a teaching about Chromebooks and a teaching about iPads slide deck that you can use with your class. It just goes through some essential questions that you can guide your class through for using those devices. getting information about if they've used Chromebooks before, what are ways they can be safe, responsible, and respectful. How do you sign in? How do you use the keyboard? Where's the power button? All of those slides are in there, and you can add your own as well. Okay. We also have some ideas here about maybe when you are teaching, you decide you're going to use some different signals than you normally use in your classroom when you guys are using computers. So you might say something like, clap it and lap it. Put your hands together and then in your lap, so they're not having their hands on the device any longer. Or they're on their computers typing away, T-Rex arms, get them up and short so you can see that their hands are up. Also, some other ideas, I like using music or sounds in my class to help signal that we're changing, that we're trying to get attention or changing to a different thing. So you could make a YouTube playlist and have a few different tech sounds, like an Apple notification sound. If the sound will play, probably not playing. Anyways, they have some YouTube videos that are both like an Apple notification sound or a sound of dial-up internet. You can have some fun and tell your students that in the old days, if you wanted to use Wi-Fi or the internet, it had to make some weird sounds first and play those sounds for your class. Those are some ideas about different fun ways that you can have some classroom signals about getting attention during tech time. Next, we'll have some tips about device upkeep. So doing some routine maintenance for devices is going to help you and your students spend less time on issues. Chromebooks should be restarted 1 time per week. This helps any updates come through that are new for the Chromebooks. If they're restarted, that will happen. If they're not being restarted, those updates aren't getting pushed through. If you are an elementary teacher and you have library once a week, it might be a good routine to say before or after library, we restart our Chromebooks, or maybe it's something you do every day during lunch. For iPads, Safari tabs should also be closed 1 time per week to have Safari running properly. And then also showing students how to navigate to the tools that they use regularly, like how to get to Clever, how to get to Google Drive, Schoology, Student View, iReady, Seesaw. Making sure that you show these steps for students is going to be really helpful in their success and making sure that things run smoothly. Pete, any questions in the chat that you want me to pause and go over?
I had a message regarding signals for folks to show readiness for their devices. We use the angle 0 degrees, 45 degrees, lid half down, look up, and back to 90 gives it 100. So yeah, ways you can use the angle of the openness of your device to signal. And then above, so do they have to be restarted at school or at home is okay? With Chrome devices, unlike some of the like the Mac things, everything's happening from the Google side, and that is network agnostic. So yeah, restarts can happen on a home network.
So either network is fine for Chromebooks. I would still recommend having it be part of your routine at school, because oftentimes once it's done at school, they're maybe not thinking about it at home. So I would just build that into my routine at school, but they definitely can do it at home.
Yeah, otherwise I've got some direct messages that, where is that document that will show students how to use various aspects of their devices? I think we could probably, I can do some digging. I know what you're talking about. There's like the care and feeding document. I can throw that in the chat.
Okay, great. Thanks, Pete.
Yep.
Okay.
And then keep the direct messages coming. I'm getting a lot of those and I'm doing my best to stay on top of them. So thanks for your patience with that, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Pete. Okay. One of the most challenging parts of one-to-one devices is that, yes, mistakes happen. Chargers are lost, poor choices are made, and we know these are going to happen. These will happen for our students as their brains are developing. These will happen for adults as we're human as well. Okay. So one thing that can be helpful is to have some steps thought of ahead of time of what are you going to do when and if mistakes happen. Ideally, these would be agreed upon at a school level, right? If a student is using their Chromebook to play games, we will give them 2 verbal warnings before they will lose their Chromebook for the rest of the day. And we all agree upon this as a school. Do we always get everyone on board with the same ideas about every single thing? No. So it might be something that you decide upon as a grade level instead. Decide with your team or your department what your policy will be. And if that is not working, at least deciding for yourself what you're going to do when things come up. So what are you going to do? Do students have their device? Is it charged? Are they following the expectations about if it's a no use time or a wait to use time? Are they on task? Are they bothering other people? Are they threatening other people? And are they putting their device and other devices at risk? So in the slide deck that I'll share later, there is a way to get a copy of this Google Doc. It has those questions about the behavior and what action you plan on taking if that behavior is not being followed. Will this keep all misbehavior from happening? No. Will it help you not be flustered and thinking in the moment what you should do and make sure you've communicated clearly what you expect of your students? Hopefully, yes. So this is just a starting spot. This is what we as the district think you should do when these things happen, but it's a way for you to start thinking about what you or your team or your school will do when issues come up. Pete, anything else?
Might want to update the 1, 2, 3, fourth one down without Hapara anymore.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
We only caught so many of those Hapara mentions.
Yeah, we're gonna shed a tear every time we eliminate one of those or update it. I did put a care and feeding document in the chat. It feels like it's more of a secondary focus one. I do think there's one that's more pictures and more elementary that I will continue to look for.
Great. Okay. Now, moving on to what I'm sure many of you are really hoping to be here for, managing student devices with our platform kind of lets you get a view into what they're currently doing with devices. So we are transitioning from Hapara Highlights to Lightspeed Classroom. Pete, do you want to give any of the rationale for that?
Oh, do I? The rationale, so there is, I mean, Hapara is, and I touched base to Shelby about this. I think the easiest way to put the rationale is Hapara is very expensive. Lightspeed is our filtering tool. So we already use them for filtering. We use them for our device or our web services like privacy policy checks. And they have a module that is very similar to Hapara and is an add-on to the filter. So yeah, I mean, the big thing, there are some different features in it that I think it kind of covers everything that's in Hapara and adds some new features. But the big thing, I mean, current budget climate, I'm sure a lot of you are aware, it saves or it's worthwhile to save money, and there's a good opportunity to do that here. So that is the main rationale for transitioning off of Hapara and onto this module in Classroom. Is just it's a small add-on to something that we're already paying for versus an entire separate service. One thing with Apara is they offer a lot of features, like say the document management side that we do in other tools like Schoology, that most people are just there for the device management, and you can't buy a la carte from Hapara. So, you're there for device management, you're paying for the document management, you're paying for the workspaces, one thing that some of us use, another thing none of us use, the workspaces. I don't even think we have it turned on or had it turned on. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's the rationale.
So, and I'm seeing some questions in the chat about, will we be able to see students' writing work in their Drive through Lightspeed? Will we be able to upload documents to the students' Google Drive through Lightspeed? And that's a good question, because some teachers did utilize those features in Hapara. We would get data from Hapara about how Hapara was being used, and about 98% of use was through Hapara highlights and being able to see what students were accessing while on their Chromebooks. Most teachers were not using some of the features that are being mentioned, like being able to upload documents directly to Google Drive, wasn't being used in Hapara. Some of those same functions can be achieved through Schoology. So many more teachers were using the features in Schoology and Google Drive assignments instead of using the Hapara document share. So with Hapara highlights being used for the classroom management, that is still available here during Lightspeed. Okay. All right, let's go to the next slide. So farewell to Hapara and hello to Lightspeed Classroom. Okay, so this is our classroom management platform for one-to-one devices. In order to see what students are doing, you need students to be logged into a district Chromebook or a district MacBook and PC. We have some students who are assigned those devices instead. Lightspeed, similarly to Hapara, does not work on student iPads because the iPads are not assigned directly to students. Okay. If a student is signed into a personal Chromebook or a personal Chrome browser using their district account, in the past, we could see that through Hapara. Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, that's not the case with Lightspeed.
Say that again. I was getting the RUP for someone.
We've got the X on the personal device.
Oh yeah, I put that on there just because Lightspeed works a little differently than Hapara in that Hapara only worked via an extension in Chrome. So if you look up in the top right of Maddie's screen, you can see there's like a clever symbol and the roof, the RW. Those are all extensions. The only way Hapara could work was if a student was signed into Chrome. If they signed to a Chromebook, you're inherently signed into Chrome. So if you signed in with your district account, then you would be pulling the extensions that we push, which would include Hapara. The way that Lightspeed works on a Chromebook is exactly the same. It works through an extension. So if a student signed into a personal Chromebook with their Lightspeed or with their Google account, they would get the Lightspeed experience. But on a MacBook and a PC, there's a program running in the background. It's called an agent, and it knows who the student logged in, and it knows what account the student logged in to the computer with, and then maps their access to it. The cool thing there is, like in the past with Hapara, if you had a class that was using MacBooks, if a student wanted to do something else, then something they didn't want you to know about, they could open Safari and go do it, because Safari didn't have the Chrome extension. In this case, they can't. Like, you can see their screen. If they had a notepad open and they were, drawing pictures in it, you'd see it. But we don't have that program, of course, running on their personal MacBooks or PCs. So it's, kinda could work on a personal device if they signed in with their district account to a personal Chromebook. But if they signed into Chrome on their personal MacBook, it's not going to work because we tell Lightspeed, don't try to run the extension on a PC or a Mac because the smart agent is already there. So probably way more information than needed. Sorry about that.
So only a personal Chromebook signed in with their
Yeah.
district account if it was a personal device, but otherwise, there'll be, it'll just be district devices that are showing. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Pete. All right, so let's take a look at Lightspeed. I'm going to show you with screenshots how you will in the future use Lightspeed Classroom. You will not be able to access this yet because you don't have any classes that are assigned to you yet. Okay, so keep that in mind that you don't need to put in the chat, I went to Clever and I don't see Lightspeed, or I went to Clever and I clicked Lightspeed and it said error, like you don't have anything to see. That's because the systems are not all set up yet. So we're kind of doing an overview first before it's live and you're actually able to use it. Okay, so in the future, you will go to Clever, click on the Lightspeed tile, and then you will come to a landing page that will show the different classes that are connected to you. So if you are a middle school or high school teacher and you have multiple periods that you teach, you'll have to select the appropriate class. If you are an elementary teacher and you have one class assigned to you, you should have one class that shows up on your dashboard. Okay, so here's a screenshot of Pete Connors in his kind of test account right now. So he has one class that he would then click on to get to and access that class. Okay, so after you've clicked on your class, click. The next thing that would show up would be your landing page for the class itself. So we can see a few different things here. We can see that we can go back to my classes. If you have other classes, if you've gone into the wrong class, you can go back to get into a different one. Under that, it will show my class and the students that are in your class. You have the ability to quickly pause the internet for students using this pause internet toggle. It's showing right now that web rules are off. So in Hapara, you could create focus sessions and filter sessions. Focus means you can only access these websites that I have curated for you. Everything else is blocked. A filter session would say, I know we have our district filter, but I'm also going to filter out that you can't use YouTube and you can't access some other website that your students might be using when they shouldn't be. Okay. So you would have those set up and you could turn them on. In Lightspeed, it will tell you that you have one of those rules on or off, like if it's on or off at all. You can also adjust the thumbnail size with this slider. So these thumbnails of each student can get bigger and smaller. You can also change it from a thumbnail view to a list view. And then there's the gear over in the corner that goes into class settings. Pete, from this screen, do you think I should mention the view schedule or on a next slide?
There, it's coming up.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
the schedule's coming up. Yeah.
So as you can see, it's feels similar to Hapara. You have your tiles of your students. You have some quick options up at the top, like pausing internet. You can adjust some of the view of things here. Okay, so this next slide is getting more into the web rules feature. So instead of being focus session and filter session, it's block mode and allow mode. So block mode means that students can browse anything except for what you've added to block. So similar to a filter session, okay? The nice thing about Lightspeed Classroom is it's a little bit easier to save and quickly toggle on different block lists that you might have created. So you might create a block list that's just no YouTube, making sure that that's not accessible to students. Or maybe you have one that is, you know, no YouTube, no Wikipedia, because you don't want them searching things on Wikipedia, but you can create a few different ones with different names and choose which one you want to use for students. Allow mode is, like I mentioned before, similar to the focus session that was in Hapara highlights, where they can only access websites that you've added to a list and everything else is blocked. And you can create different lists that get saved and you can turn on at different times. So you could create a general testing allow list where you allow Schoology and Clever, and that's it. You might have one that is for some other purpose as well, but you can name them different things. You also have your advanced options of allowing internet access when done, where the students are allowed to change their status to done. You may or may not want to do that. Also, you can check that you allow single sign-on. So you allow things like Clever and Google and Microsoft Office to just be allowed. So then you don't have to type in Clever's website. You don't have to type in Google. Those will just be allowed automatically. Okay. Getting into class settings and schedule. There are two. I'm going to go back here a little bit. So you can see up at the top of this screen, there's this purple bar. It says this class is not currently in session. And what this means is that when your class is not in session, you can't pause the internet for your students. You can't turn on web rules. So the first thing you have to do is make sure your class is in session. And in order to do that, there's two ways that you can do it. One is by using the ad hoc section of class settings and schedule, or using the custom setting of the schedule in class settings. So I'm going to show that. So if this bar is up, I would click here on class settings, and that would take me to this screen where I can choose ad hoc or custom. Ad hoc means I have my students with me, they're here in the class, I'm going to have them for the next 30 minutes. So I'm going to say I'm starting a session for 30 minutes and I'm going to start it right now. Or I only have 15 minutes, or I'm going to have them all day or for a few hours. You can choose the amount of time that you create for that session. So that's one option that's kind of in the moment. I need to use Lightspeed Classroom with my students, and I'm going to turn that on. The other option is to set a custom schedule. This allows you to say, this is the time when I have this group of students with me. So for instance, if I am teaching middle school, I might look and go to my first period course, go to course settings, and put in at the beginning of the semester all the times that first period is meeting with me, depending on my bell schedule. Pete, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just had getting a lot of direct messages regarding web rules, and I've been answering a lot of questions, so I haven't been as an attentive audience member, but I just wanted to cover that you haven't gotten there, or you have gone over or gone through the web rules, right, Maddie? I just want to make a distinction for people about allow and block and the things that are going on here.
Sure.
So with web rules in Hapara, you had your web rule, your guided browsing sat on top of where students could already go. So, you didn't have to block, say, some sports book, gambling site, because it was already blocked both by Fortinet, which is on the district network, and by Lightspeed, which follows them on wherever they go, as far as filtering is concerned. So that still exists. If you, Maddie, if you back up to like showing the class, and remember there was that toggle for web rules, where it says like, well, it's not really a toggle, but it's saying like web rules on or off. When they say web rules, like they really mean, in Hapara speak, they mean guided browsing. Like the filter is still there, both the Fortinet one if they're on campus and the Lightspeed filter if they're, well, on campus or off campus. So that's just letting you know if you are doing, well, what Lightspeed calls web rules, which in Hapara talk we would have called guided browsing. So you don't have to like worry about putting in a bunch of, filtery kind of stuff, for elementary students, like all the shopping, social media is gone for everyone. All the mature stuff's gone. You don't have to do any of that. It's just the, if you wanted to give, I had a question that was like, during a Schoology exam, could I block Google? Yes, like that would be a great use of web rules in this context to, if you just put Schoology as the only thing they could get to, or you specifically blocked Google, like those would be two different ways of, two sides of the same coin, exclude stuff or exclude everything or exclude particular things. You do that either blocking or allowing it. So that answered one question. Is there a maximum number of things that you can block? I don't think there is. I feel like that was a question we got to ask in a session. I will look for some documentation and add that to the slideshow if there is. It was only 10 in Hapara, and I don't believe that there is here. Do we need to allow clever? Nope. Like that should be kind of answered by that, what I've said earlier of, they're allowed to get to it. So if you used allow mode, which blocks everything except the stuff that you put on the allow list, then yes, you would have to put clever there. If you wanted them to get to clever and to Schoology and to the one YouTube video that's regarding this assessment, you put the 3 of those things in your allow list and you hit go and you're good. But generally, no, you don't have to put clever in there because that they can get there on their own. Cool. I think that answers. I've got some other questions about the scheduler. So if we pop over to scheduler, there is the day schedule, like you can use the bell schedule, and that is pushed at the school level. Those could be something that schools are able to push, something we're working on with Lightspeed. But for the most part, the custom schedules would be the way to go. Yeah.
And Pete, if you have a custom schedule
Mhm.
and then like, oh, we're 2 hours late start and everything is wonky, but you have the custom schedule set, can you like choose to do ad hoc instead,
Yeah.
even if you have a custom schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, when
Okay.
I've been demoing this, all I've used is ad hoc, and I think of it as like, yeah, imagine it was maybe an early release thing. You could make a schedule for that, but there's an assembly, the whole day is goofed up. I would just ad hoc for my students. The whole thing this thing is trying to do is get ahead of that issue we used to have in Hapara, and maybe you haven't experienced it, but I certainly, as an ITC, you cover enough teachers that there's somebody who ran an assessment in their 5th period class. They blocked everything except Schoology. Then the students go into their next class. They go to just do normal, class unblocked stuff, and they're super locked down to Schoology because that guided browsing session is still running. What in the scheduler here, you can essentially say, well, my class ends at 10 a.m. So therefore my web rules stop enforcing on that student. The other cool thing here is like when your class starts, if you always run web rules, like if you always have your students locked down to just Schoology, it's going to come on when your schedule starts. So you don't have to go into Hapara and like every day, like turn back on your template group of websites. I do have a question there about like if so if you want them to just go to Schoology, then yeah, you would put Schoology into the allow list and run that, and that would be the only place they could go. Yeah.
Yep. The other nice thing is, and we might have a screenshot in here. Yes. Okay. We're just gonna get to it. I was gonna say one of the other really cool features of Lightspeed Classroom that is a benefit versus that situation that Pete was talking about in Hapara, where, you know, well, another teacher has this guided browsing session. I have to figure out what period they were just in that did this and try to call that teacher and say, hey, can you end your guided browsing session because my student can't get into something. What it looks like for you as a teacher when you go to your class, if your student is in a different class, like they're still in a session from another teacher, it will say down in this available to add, it will say that you can add them, pull them to your class instead, and it will say which teacher's class they're in currently. So
well, that's really nice. Yeah.
Let's say one, your student isn't in the class, like isn't physically in the classroom yet. They haven't gotten to your period. If you go to Lightspeed, you could see, oh, well, they must be finishing up with, you know, Ms. Stanton. Let me like give them a call and just see what's going on instead of having to track all of that down. Or let's say they are in your class and obviously not missing from the room, you can pull them into your class instead of having them stay in that session that they were in prior, which is pretty great, especially for our secondary teachers. Okay. If students are completely just not online, they won't be showing up in your class. So that's one thing to keep in mind if they're not connected. All right. Pete, do you know if, let's say I start my class, I have kids offline, and then they cut, and I've started my block mode, right? And then a student comes online, do they automatically come into my class?
Yeah.
Okay.
If the class is started either via schedule or ad hoc, well, I guess ad hoc is technically part of schedule. If the class is running and the student shows up, they immediately pick up the rules, whether you were pausing the internet or doing some kind of web rules.
Yeah. I did want to just point out again as well. Let's go back here. So you can see it says Bell, custom, and ad hoc. Pete mentioned with Bell, that's something that gets pushed out on the upper level. So you probably won't for yourself go to that section much. And we found that with secondary schools, you guys just have so many different schedules sometimes that it can be really difficult to set a good Bell schedule for the entire school. So I would recommend, if I'm a secondary teacher and starting the year and I know my schedule for my students, I might go in and create my custom one, but just know that that Bell schedule part is not something that you can schedule on your own. The custom is how you create your own Bell schedule, if that makes sense. Was that clear-ish, Pete? Or are you
sorry, I was answering direct messages.
You're fine. Hopefully
there's a lot of direct messages.
Okay.
I appreciate people keeping Maddie on track, because if these are all popping up, I think we'd be underwater.
Okay. We did want to show, of course, though, that you can pull students in if they're in another class, and that it shows, you can kind of see really tiny, it showed that they were in my class instead of in Pete's class earlier. If that was confusing at all too. This was a screenshot from Pete's screen, so that's why it said Maddie Oakley down at the bottom, because they were in my class. Okay. All right, so a class is in session. Maybe you're not filtering right now. You're not blocking, you're not allowing, you're just wanting to see what students are doing, right? So you, when you're in your class, it will show those little thumbnails of each student's screen and a little mini view of what they're currently on. From there, you can go to an individual student's thumbnail kind of hover over that thumbnail and click the 3 dots, and you'll have some options that come up. You can lock their screen. So just that student stops having access to the internet. You can unlock it. You can send them a link directly. I really liked using this feature in Hapara instead of having to email or post something on Schoology. If I found something in the moment, I could just send a link via Hapara Highlights. You can do the same thing in Lightspeed Classroom. You can also send a message to students. When you click send a message, do we have slides of this, Pete?
The
Send
messaging?
a message. Yeah.
No, I don't think we do have that. Yeah.
I'm gonna go, no, I'm just gonna go off of memory. I believe there's about 3
Yeah.
preset
Yep.
things saying, do you need help? Are you done? Something else, and then a custom. The ones that are preset and have a yes or no response, students will get a little pop-up of your message and they can click yes or no, and you'll get that response back. If you send a custom message, like, what are you even doing right now? We've talked about this 4 times that you need to be on task. You type that all in. Students will see the message, but they cannot respond to it. Like, they don't have an answer to click on. So just keeping that in mind, it will pop up for them, but there's no way for them to respond or to really type back and forth with you. Another thing that you can do with Lightspeed Classroom that we couldn't do with Hapara Highlights is you can share a student's screen using Lightspeed Classroom. So if a student is doing something, working on a project, and you want to show what they are doing to the rest of the class, you can do that from your Lightspeed Classroom view. So that's an option there for share student screen. Another feature is record screen. I don't remember the exact timeline on that, but if you click record screen, it will take a screencast of the student's screen for a certain amount of time. Pete, do you happen to know off the top of your head the time that it records for record screen?
No, I don't know that.
Okay.
Sorry.
I do believe it also goes, because it's connected to our Lightspeed filter, which also tracks what websites students are going to and all of that. I think when you click record screen, it will go backwards in time, a minute or 2, and then go forwards in time. So if student is, you notice at 1:00 p.m. that a student seems off task and you've given reminders and you want evidence of this to show your admin team, and you click record, that recording will be 12:58 until 1:10, right? It will go a little bit back in time and then a little bit forward. So if you're like, oh, I see they're doing this thing, but I just missed that other thing and I didn't click record screen, it will actually grab that prior part. So that's pretty cool. So that's what you can do in just one student's tile. There are also some options of what you can do for all students. So to get to those options, you would click on the 3 dots over on the right side of the platform, and that will bring up the menu for all students. Then you could lock all screens for all students, unlock all screens for students, send a link to all students, send a message to all students. You can also add a student. It says you can add a student to your class, but that might not be available when you start pushing out. When it says all students share screen, I don't think you actually can share everyone's screen at once, but I may be wrong. So I'm not sure about
where's that
piece.
button?
In the all student section on the right, it has the
Oh
option
yeah,
to share screen.
so yeah, what that is saying is share your screen to everyone. And on the left, when you click share screen on the student, it's sharing their screen to everyone. So that's one of the new features, I would say, that we never really had in Hapara, is a tab. If you shared that student screen, a tab will open on every student screen showing what their screen. So a good way to show work. And then, yeah, using the one on the right, those tools are all, it's lock everybody's screen, unlock everybody's screen, send a message to everybody, send a link to everybody. And then, yeah, I guess that is kind of weird because it is like, do this to everyone. Well, maybe that still works in that mindset then. Share your screen to everyone versus on the
Okay.
left, it's specifically do those things to that student or share their screen to everyone else.
Got it.
The nice
Okay.
thing too worth mentioning is when you click those shares, it'll warn you first, like, hey, you're about to share your screen to everyone. You hit OK, and then you choose which screen too. So if you're someone who's savvy with like multiple windows or multiple tabs, you can just share particular ones, just like you probably would do in Zoom, which is nice. You don't have to like have your whole desktop showing or something like that.
Hey, I saw a question in the chat asking if you were to record their screen, would it alert them that it is happening? Like, hey, you're in this Zoom and it's being recorded.
I don't
think
know.
so.
The other question I don't know the answer to, well, probably lots of other ones, is where does the recording go? And I just I pulled up one of my demo class to be like, yeah, where is there like a little, no, I don't see like an inbox or something of like my recording archive. But I'll find
We've got
out.
you guys asking good questions for
So
us to
yeah,
follow up with.
there's quite a
And
few
we'll-
questions where I'm copying and pasting them into a document, and like I would love to acknowledge this for the people that were avid users of document management in Hapara, which obviously this is not that. You know, our team would still love to explore what, you know, it's not going to be Hapara, but what can we do, you know, that gives a similar experience to that, if anything. So those kind of questions get copied and pasted over. I got a lot of questions about schedules and controlling of schedules, where recordings go. Susan Black and I have been having a great background DM about BYOD and student devices, and you know, can a school require that students use their district devices? I do believe a school decides if they want to allow students to bring their own devices, and could decide not to do that. Like, I don't think that is like a student right to bring your own device. They certainly have the right to, or they are allowed to refuse the Chromebook that they are issued. Don't think they are then entitled to bring their own device. But, you know, if you are, as in Susan's case, a class where a quarter of your kids are bringing personal devices, you know, there's something to address there. So yeah, a lot of copy and pasting of questions here. So thanks for sharing those.
We will have an FAQ section either in the Lightspeed Classroom section of the staff toolbox in our instructional technology session. I'm also thinking we can work on the FAQ after Pete teaches this class also in person this week. We could send out an email to all participants with what are some of those questions that came up and what are the answers after we've had time to research. So if there's anything that you're hearing that you have a question around and we don't quite have an answer yet, we'll make sure to grab that for you. Okay. All right, student status. I thought this was pretty cool and is a little added feature that wasn't available in Hapara. So when students are in are using their Chromebook, they'll have a little extension in their Chrome bar. You can see it kind of looks like a blue message box with a person inside. Pete?
Sorry, I got the answer to a question via a DM. Question about where do you see recordings? If you actually just click on the student, a sidebar comes out and there's tabs, history, and recordings. So if you started a recording, you get like a bigger view of their screen if they're running. Yeah, so like if on Maddie's screen here, if you actually just clicked on that student, this sidebar pops out and it shows their name. You can do all the stuff there: locking screen, unlock screen, send link. But then there's like 3 sections: tabs, history, and recordings. The recordings go there. The history is kind of nice. That's like you could actually see what they've opened and closed recently. And then the tabs is what they currently have open. And then there's like a big view of their current screen.
Cool. Thanks, Pete. So
Yep.
instead of clicking on the three dots, you would just click on that tile without clicking on the three dots, and you would get that other menu. Yes. I think he's looking at another message now. I'm
Yeah. Yes. Yes, that is
Okay.
true. And thank you, Ellie, for shouting that out. And
Cool.
yeah, much appreciated there.
Yay. Love it. Okay. So from a student perspective, I'm on my Chromebook and I want to get your attention about some help that I need, but maybe I'm a little bit reticent to do that, or I just want to show you, hey, I'm working on this, or let you know that I'm done with the activity. If I click on that classroom status icon, I can select between working, need help, and done. And then on my teacher end, I'm gonna go back over here. This over here where it says filter by status, if I click on that, it will show me how many students might need help or are done or are working on something. So it's not the option to select one of those isn't going to pop up for them, but they can click on that extension and choose that if they want to signal to you that they need help without coming up and having everyone watch them as they walk up to you. Okay. Pete, can you talk a little bit about Access Scan?
Yes. Okay. This one is much easier. This Access Scan is a cool little tool that is an extension that lives up in your extension bar. It shows up like that kind of infinity ribbon symbol that seems to pervade Lightspeed. I don't think we auto pin it, but you see how in that picture there's the name Lightspeed Access Scan and then a little pin. The ones that are pinned are the ones that show up across the left there. I would recommend pinning that one because when you click on it, you get the thing over on the left, which is, oh great, and here it is live. You go to a site, you type in your student's email address, and you scan the page. If that student, that will tell you, then it will give back a reply of, can the student get to that page or is it blocked? And if it is blocked, why? Like what category is it in, or is it on the custom block list? You know, I'm sure a lot of us that have been, you know, depending on what you teach, or especially like Vimeo and YouTube videos and coding sites and places that, you know, maybe like could fall into the wrong categories or maybe the right categories, but you just want to know, is this something that students can access? And in the past, maybe you'd ask your STS and they could check for you on the filter side, or you'd send it to one of your ITC, or maybe you just grab a student Chromebook and try going to the page if you had a student, or you have a you know, student in the district in your family that you could test it out with. Or you call help desk and you ask them to check. But this will do it for you. It only works for like the student's email address that you put in has to be a student that is in one of your classes. So you could just pick somebody with a memorable ID, or if it's very specific to a class, you know, I don't think there's, unless you're like an itinerant staff member who crosses significant grade levels, you're not going to really run into a situation where, you know, your 10th grade or I don't know, your 12th grade statistics student has a different profile than your 9th grade algebra student. The high school students have the same thing. The only thing that might be different is if you had a student whose parents specifically said, I don't want my student to get to YouTube, they might be in a no YouTube group, in which case if you chose to scan a YouTube site with a student who is in a no YouTube group, it's going to kick back and say, no, they can't get there because that student doesn't have access to YouTube. And that would be a good indication to test with a different student. Okay, so that's Access Scan. It's really easy to use, and it answers that question of, can my students get to this site?
And I think, Pete, because that like pin is kind of a light blue instead of a dark blue, I think it is automatically pinned up at the top of your bar here. Like, see how
Oh,
it's light instead
oh,
of dark
okay.
blue?
Oh, because we're
So,
pinning those. Yeah, light blue means we force pin them, you're saying.
yes.
Got it. Got it.
And this is great. I'm really excited about this for especially some of our high school, middle school CTE teachers. Like, you might have a guest speaker coming in who wants to show a certain website, and you can, get what websites they want to show ahead of time and quickly do access scan, make sure they're not blocked. And if they are, you could create a ticket in the help desk and say, I have this special situation where we need this site unblocked. Can you help me get this settled so that my students can see it? Just to help you prepare a little bit more and know what's coming instead of just being surprised with something being blocked. Because with categorizations of websites, sometimes things that seem really innocuous do get blocked. So, all right. So that is our main overview of Lightspeed Classroom. I wanted to point out that you can, and Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, even if you have this purple bar where it says the class is not currently in session. This is my question, Pete, and you've played around with it more than I have. So riddle me this. If my class is not in session, can I still see what tabs my students are on, or do I have to have class in session first?
Gosh, I am awful because I answered a direct message while you asked that twice. Can you say it one more time?
Yes, I can.
Sorry about
Okay.
that.
If I have this
deeply.
purple bar up
Mhm.
that says class is not currently in session, I know I can't pause the internet or turn on web rules for them, but could I still see what tabs they're on down here?
Yeah, you get a box that says they are active, and I believe you can click onto them. You just can't control them.
Okay, so you couldn't like lock their screen or send them a message. You could just get a
You'd
little
have,
preview of what they're doing. Okay.
yeah, you'd have to pull
So
them in.
yeah, so a takeaway that I want everyone to hear and really remember, that's the biggest change from Hapara to Lightspeed, is in order to use a lot of the functionality of Lightspeed, if you see that purple bar and your class is not in session, you need to change it to being in session in order to do things with your students in that class. So just making sure that you either set that schedule up or click on view schedule and click on ad hoc, put in 30 minutes, put in an hour so that you can record their screen, close tabs, etc. Okay. So that's one thing that's a little bit different. But if you set up that schedule ahead of time and your schedule is pretty consistent, you shouldn't have to worry about it too much.
Can I just do a clearinghouse of some direct messages answers? Okay.
Yeah, because we are done with for now, we're done with the Lightspeed slides.
Cool. Okay. There's been some conversation around like a list of things to add to your block mode or your allow mode. And Cool Math Games has come up a couple of times. So again, this web rule is like, it's going to block, like, if it's on the block list, it's on the block list, like generally in the background. If there are things that need to go on the district block list, or things that could get categorized better so that they are blocked by the filters, which this is not a filter, right? Like, they should go on that list. And I think sometimes like Cool Math Games some people want to use it like as maybe a reward, or some people think it has some academic benefit. So sometimes it's not blocked. I thought that it was currently. There's probably a million proxies that kids use or students use to still get to that kind of content. As much as it feels like, whack-a-mole, if those URLs, like if you see, okay, I've got a student here who's obviously off task playing a game, this game should be blocked. Rather than just like closing the tab. Well, I mean, obviously you're in the moment, you know what you have the bandwidth to do. Maybe you just close the tab and follow up with the student later. But if you can grab the URL and send it to your STS, they can get it added to the actual like filtered list so no one else can get to it. And, you know, that is always going to be the best way to, if there's something that, you know, is in some, like there's those sites like code, what is it? There's like GitHub and these types of ones where they, you know, students just embed proxies in there. And then, but if you turn off GitHub, well, then the coding classes, they need those sites to teach. So it just kind of becomes this, well, we got to block the ones where they are putting up games or where people are putting up games. So if we can block those via the filters, all the better. Yeah, so that's the, on the back end, when I see another question about district block list, like it's going on in the background. It's in the filter system. There's not really a way for teachers to see like what's on the block list, because like the way the filtering works is, for at least for the two filters that we use, they categorize the internet as best they can, and then use like a machine learning, you know, I'm sure now they would call it AI, even though it's just machine learning, to make decisions about, does this meet a category? So like eBay is in the shopping category. They, you know, we all know that's a shopping site. It's in the category. Elementary shopping websites are blocked, so they can't get there. But if a new site was put up that was like, you know, say Mercari just comes out, maybe the machine learning can look at that and say, okay, well, this is essentially a shopping website. That also gets blocked. It's not like natively put on it. Obviously, if you're a filter company and you've spent decades categorizing the internet, you don't show that list. If you have a list of categories, you also don't like release your AI that categorizes stuff. So there's not really a way to look at it. We have our own like, also block this stuff that we can just keep submitting to the filter and it immediately blocks it. But it's just a custom block list. You know, it's could be thousands of sites, but it's probably hundreds. The more what you do is you like categorize a site, and then that goes into their database of categorization. Yeah. Okay, so more stuff about blocking. Cool. Yeah. So good note there about like if you have ones that you're constantly blocking, you know, if those can get to the SCS, they will put in the tickets, and then those will get blocked by the filter, rather than having to continue to do them through something like first Apara and now Lightspeed. So can we close a student tab? Ooh, that was an easy one. Yes. Yes, when your student has a tab open, it'll just show up in that list. There'll be a little X next to it. You can just hit it. And then I think they'll get a little message that says, you know, in this case, it's orange. And it says, you know, your tab was closed by teacher using this. Yeah. Cool. There is a question too that I wanted to just hit on that's about librarians or teacher librarians, music teachers, folks that had like full building access. That's something we're working on with Lightspeed. I wish if Shelby were here, I'd refer the question to her. But it's not here yet. Everything that's in here as far as classes are concerned comes out of Synergy. So if you don't see classes yet, then they probably haven't been pushed. I know I've heard from Lightspeed that you can, sorry, I'm still looking at new chats, from Lightspeed that admins can see all the classes, like principals. So that seems to indicate to me that there's a way to do it, but the rostering for this is like still like as of this morning, like I think was like looking really good from what I understand from the data team. So classes are named correctly, students are in the right classes. So now I think getting that back end stuff of like admins and like who can get large scale access, that could get ironed out. Yeah, and then adding other people. There's several questions about that. Anybody who gets added in Synergy should become a co-teacher here. So if you have a co-teacher, and this is true for Schoology too, it's always best to work with your OM to get them, and I will emphasize this word, correctly added as a co-teacher in Synergy. Shar is able to help with that because it will filter through into a few different tools. As far as like adding them as a co-teacher here, I don't see a button for that like we had one in Hapara, but then I feel like maybe in the chats somebody said they maybe saw it. So that's something I would need to dig for at least, and we'll be putting in a feature request or encouraging Shelby to. Yeah. So as far as subs are concerned, if you were a long-term sub, this was true in Schoology as well, and I believe Hapara, well, no, not Hapara. If you're a long-term sub and the OM puts you in as a co-teacher, essentially, you get access to this, you get access to Schoology. If you're a short-term sub, you don't get added to Synergy, so you wouldn't show up in this. We might be able to find a way to work around that, like where an STS could maybe add someone to a sub to a class. I do think for short-term, like just for the day kind of access, I wouldn't really expect it, but maybe for like a 2-week technically short-term, but actual or seemingly long-term, but actually short-term sub, that might be something that could get added. Okay. Okay, I think that's, and then instructional assistants. I'm not sure how they're handled in Synergy, so I think that's going to be one that I copy and paste onto my list of things to share with Shelby. Yeah, paras, IAs, interns. Yeah, you could add them yourself. I think that would be great if there's a way to do that here. There might be a way to do it on the Synergy way. Yeah. I know I probably said this in a few direct messages. There's going to be a fall PD offering. I think, Maddie, we're talking about October, and absolutely this class, like maybe a shorter one that's like very targeted at this one, you know, because this obviously tries to be digital classroom management, but obviously the big story is, you know, moving on from Hapara to
and like
this.
we've mentioned before, we also are, you know, we take this show on the road. We have come to your buildings and done trainings on Hapara highlights. We can definitely do trainings around Lightspeed Classroom. And, you know, once people are introduced to a platform like Lightspeed Classroom and like Hapara highlights, like you guys want to get in there and try it. I'm sure most of you are like, man, I wish that I had my class all registered and I could play around with some of these things now, you know, like you want to try these things. Those are some of our like most well-reviewed classes, is when we show teachers how to use these tools. They get immediate results from being able to use it and try things out the next day. So let us know or talk to your SDLT or your admin if you think this would be a beneficial thing for your whole school. We can do a little mini module, all those different things we're happy to do. Okay. Pete, you want me to talk a little bit about digital citizenship, and then we can do a general any lingering questions section? Okay.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thanks.
Yep. All right. So supporting and modeling information literacy and digital citizenship. What do we want students in general to know about digital behavior? These are things for all staff members to reiterate with all students when they're using devices. We want them to know about sharing safely, or rather not sharing information, not sharing personal information, not telling anyone online your name, age, or location. Thinking about the idea of a digital footprint, that students can leave a trail online of things they post and say. Considering cyberbullying, and that if anyone does or says something online that feels sad or uncomfortable, tell a trusted adult. I know, like I said, we have many people in this course. How cyberbullying looks in kindergarten looks very different from how it looks in 11th grade, right? So you might have ways that those are handled differently by admin. Talking to students about time, balancing their time and on and off of devices. Following school expectations, no matter what they're doing on a device, that they should be responsible, safe, and respectful. And like I mentioned before, there is a user agreement. Students are using school assigned devices. They are assigned to them, but they're owned by the school district. And if they're misbehaving with it, it can lead to very restricted usage of devices. Okay. So thank you for coming to this training. I already said we can come and give another version of it at your school. I'm also going to put in the chat the link here that goes to all of the some of the resources that we shared in here from earlier. Let me grab that real quick if I can. I think I closed it. Pete, are you able to grab that link in the slide deck in the notes? It's this bit.ly one. Yes, no, you're muted.
There we go. Now I'm unmuted. It's in the slideshow. Where is it in the slideshow?
In the notes for the slideshow.
On a particular, oh, in the bit.ly for the very last one.
Yes.
Okay. Somebody asked me if GitHub is blocked for middle schoolers, and I'm testing that currently.
Thank you to everyone for coming today. If you want to stick around for those resources, great. Otherwise, our presentation is finished. We appreciate you being here and being patient with us as we show off a system that's not fully live yet. We're excited to hear your experiences as the school year gets going. And we are here to support you if you need that support. So thanks to everyone for being here. Have a great start to your school year.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
That question about GitHub at the middle school, it does look like it's locked at the middle school level. If the person who asked that is still here.
And if
Yeah.
anyone has,
Thank you, appreciate it.
Oh, sorry. And if anyone still has lingering questions about what they were able to do with Hapara document sharing that they can't do without having to Hapara, or they're not sure how to do the same thing, reach out to your instructional technology coordinator so we can hear more about that and help you with coming up with a solution. So if you're in the West region, that's me. If you're in the East region, that's Pete. The north is Josh Emond and the south is Gavin Molitor. Suzanne, I see your hand raised and you look unmuted, Betty. So go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Do you guys have time for a quick question?
Sure.
Yeah. So what I used to love about Hapara is in one screen, I could see all my students' Google Drives, particularly my folder for their class, from my class. And I could see at a glance, have they even opened a document I sent them? And when was the last time they worked on it? 3 days ago, 3 months ago, 3 minutes ago? If I asked my whole class to go to their drive and all get to that same scene, will it look the same in Lightspeed as it did in Hapara?
I think one thing, I think what you're asking is, I know I can't just go look at their Google Drive, but if I had them all go to their Google Drive and I can view their screen,
right,
could I be able to see those things?
Yeah, like in those little thumbnails, wouldn't I be able to see essentially the same view?
Yeah.
Yeah, you should be
cool.
able to.
Yeah, that'd be a nice workaround.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is just that if you do share anything or create an assignment using Schoology Google Drive assignment app, it creates a file that lives in your drive, but gives permissions to the student. So then you could use that to see like, what's the revision history? Have they accessed it? All of that. So
got it. All right. Thank you so much, you guys. Great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne.
I had one more question.
Sure.
In Hapara, we used to be able to make groups. And so if you're in a class, you could just filter it to see just a couple kids versus the entire class. Do we have
Yep.
that option or something similar?
Yeah, it's over on the left in like when you enter the class
You
on
can set
the,
that up.
it's like, you know, the heading to the, just to the left of the leftmost student. Yeah, thanks, Maddie. You'll see, yeah,